Thank you very much. I hope you had a good lunch. Um, this is session two. The theme of the session two is public diplomacy beyond culture. My name is Hyunwoo Kim, currently president of the Sejong Institute in Korea. The theme, which is public diplomacy beyond culture, I was wondering what this is about. And I think public diplomacy usually is comprised of government efforts to deal with foreign countries' people. The target is people, not government. And also, it's dealing with soft powers of the states, not hard powers. That's what used to be the definition of the public diplomacy. But I think in this session, all the renowned experts are making presentations about each country's public diplomacy, not specifically related to culture, but something else. I think each presenter is talking about some specific elements of each country's public diplomacy. For example, some of the specific features of those countries related to peacemaking or economic development, or some bridging role of those countries between two great powers or two continents, so on and so forth. So I think this session is very meaningful because this gives some new defining elements of public diplomacy of each country. But nevertheless, the public policies usually have some roles as an epistemological variables. For example, what happened in the former Soviet Union, the European Unions and European countries' public diplomacy towards former Soviet Union and relevant countries have worked because of those values and culture of those democracies have been spreading into those countries. So I think these kinds of processes and procedures of specific elements of public diplomacy still works. So I think this is something that we have to look at, especially these countries that each presenters are making presentations about have some specific forte and some positive and strong elements of those countries. Let me briefly introduce each presenter first. 6 presenters we have, but I think we'll have 3 presenters make presentation first and then have a short break and rest of 3 presenters do their works later on. First presenter, Elder Aripov, who's now director of the Institute for Strategic and Regional Studies under the president of Uzbekistan. I asked him over the lunch that if he's a good friend of president, he denied it, but he said that he meets president every week. So I think he's very close to the president of Uzbekistan. Second presenter, Serzan Doğan. Yes, who's now a communications counselor at the Turkish embassy in Korea. I think he will talk about the Turkey's public diplomacy. And third presenter is Farid Shafiev, who's now chairman of AIL Center of Azerbaijan. Fourth presenter is Kaka Gogolashvili, yes, who's now a director of the Center of European Union Studies, HK+CIAS, in Georgia. Fourth presenter, Koichi Yonemura, who is now editor in foreign news at the Mainichi newspapers in Japan. Lastly, but not the least, Mr. Nishakant Ojha, who's now professor on practice at the Ajinkya D.Y. Patil University in India. So I'll give you for about 20 or 25 minutes. You have a lot of time, so don't worry about the time limit. First, Mr. Elder Aripov. Yeah, floor is yours.
Dear Mr. Kim Hyun-wook, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished scholars, first of all, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the organizers for the invitation and for the possibility to speak today. And I will agree with chairperson regarding the notion of public diplomacy. For a long time, we really perceived it primarily as a governmental instrument of cultural presence. Concerts, exhibitions, exchange programs, and all of this, of course, is undoubtedly important. However, and it was mentioned by many speakers early in the morning, that the world has changed dramatically, and of course, public diplomacy has changed along with it. We are living in an era in which global trust is experiencing deep crisis, geopolitical confrontation is intensifying, international institutions, unfortunately, losing authority, and divisions, political, economic, civilizational, are becoming deeper and deeper. And under these circumstances, public diplomacy ceases to be merely the soft wrapping of state policy. It becomes a strategic resource and perhaps one of the few resources capable of functioning where official mechanisms fail. What does it mean in practice? It means a transition from monologue to dialogue, from tell others about yourself to listen to others. And this brings us to what I consider the central question of our session, where does the boundary lie between cultural diplomacy and public diplomacy in strategic dimension? And I'm absolutely convinced that this boundary lies where presentation ends and engagement begins, where it is no longer a state speaking to the people of another country, but rather peoples speaking to one another through science, youth exchanges, parliamentary contacts, and joint projects. So public diplomacy is not aimed at winning a competition for the audience sympathy. Rather, it seeks to build sustainable relationships based on mutual benefit and mutual respect. And now allow me to share how we understand these principles in Uzbekistan, in Central Asia, let's say, and how we seek to put them in practice. And first of all, let me remind you that just 10 years ago, Central Asia was quite different. During these 10 years, Central Asia went through the most actually profound transformations in the post-Soviet history. Just 10 years ago, Central Asia was quite unstable, was full of conflicts. Checkpoints on our borders were closed. Regional trade was practically frozen. There were even frequent armed confrontations along the borders, especially between Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. People were not able to visit their relatives their friends, even cemeteries on the other side of the border. Today, this has changed completely. Cooperation and mutual trust have replaced confrontation. All disputes were resolved. Actually, regional trade is now booming and has increased 2 times during last 8 years. Mutual investments increased by 5 times. And by the way, even during pandemic, checkpoints on our borders among Central Asian states remained open, and it was quite new symbol of collective resilience and mutual trust. And the main lesson from Central Asia is quite simple, but powerful. Peace became possible when pragmatism replaced ideology and cooperation replaced zero-sum thinking. What changed was not geography, but political thinking. First, there was, of course, clear political will at the highest level. Regional leaders made a deliberate choice to prioritize stability over confrontation. They accepted very simple rule that no country of Central Asia can develop sustainably at the expense of its neighbors. Second, pragmatism guided decision-making. Instead of postponing difficult issues, we address them directly. And through compromises, through dialogue, compromises were found. And even very difficult territorial disputes were resolved. And finally, very important thing, local communities and public diplomacy played a decisive role in all this process. Peace was not built not only in capitals or through agreements between governments. It was sustained by thousands of human connections. Academic exchanges, cultural initiatives, youth programs, tourism, and growing cross-border trades. These interactions helped overcome decades of mistrust, humanized relations across borders, and gradually transformed perceptions of neighboring countries from sources of concern into partners and stakeholders in common future. In Central Asia, the expansion of people-to-people contacts created constituencies with a direct interest in preserving stability and cooperation. Cross-border commerce revived, tourism increased, and local communities began to experience tangible benefits from regional openness. Peace ceased to be merely a political objective and became a shared public interest. And this is perhaps the most durable foundation of all. When ordinary people start benefiting from cooperation, they become its strongest advocates and guardians. That is how peace is not only achieved, but continuously reinforced and protected. Through public diplomacy contacts, through people-to-people contacts, local communities started to benefit from peace. And this became the main guarantor of peace sustainability. Allow me now to turn to the institutional dimension, because public diplomacy that extends beyond culture requires not only political will, but also concrete mechanisms. In Central Asia, such mechanisms are already in place and are operating systematically. Regular meetings of ministers, sectoral dialogues, economic forums, exhibitions have been launched. For example, in September last year, the third Interparliamentary Forum of Central Asian countries was held in Bishkek, where discussions focused on harmonizing legislation in the areas of trade, environmental protection and security. The Forum of University Rectors and Forum of Historians and Regional Study Experts were established, and it provided good platform for academic exchanges. Particular attention should also be given to the media dimension. In the near future, the launch of international media platform, History and Culture of Central Asia, One Past and Shared Future, is planned. It is a very important initiative. We hope to launch it next year. And the main goal of this platform is to promote regional identity. It is very important for Central Asians to identify themselves not only as the citizens of Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, but also as representatives of the common Central Asian region. And finally, the Central Asian Youth Forum is no longer a one-time event, but a permanent platform where young people jointly shape the agenda and build the kind of horizontal trust that does not depend on diplomatic protocols. Dear colleagues, here in Seoul, it would be unfair not to speak also about Uzbek-Korean relationship. Uzbekistan and the Republic of Korea provide a compelling example of how public diplomacy and human connections become the foundation of a genuine strategic partnership. And, relations between our countries were elevated to the level of a special strategic partnership. And Ambassador of Uzbekistan already mentioned early in the morning that total amount of Korean investments in Uzbekistan reached almost $8 billion. The trade turnover is about $2 billion. Yet behind these figures lies something much deeper. Uzbekistan is home to the largest Korean diaspora among CIS countries, nearly 180,000 people. And this is not merely statistic, but rather living bridges between our two peoples, individuals who simultaneously carry and embody two cultures. Korean restaurants and cuisine, Korean television dramas and films have long become an organic part of the fabric of Uzbek society. For decades, the Korean community itself has remained an unofficial ambassador of Korean culture in our country. And I believe this is public diplomacy in the most natural form, when appreciation for the culture of another people emerges organically, without state propaganda, without state programs or budgets, and creates a sustainable emotional foundation for all subsequent cooperation. It is noteworthy that this interest has naturally evolved into a demand for knowledge. Today, the Korean language is taught at 9 universities and 24 schools across Uzbekistan. 4 branches of South Korean universities operate in the country and the Korean International University. And at the same time, Uzbek language departments have been established at universities in Busan and Daegu in the Republic of Korea, meaning that the interest is mutual, and this is fundamentally important. So Uzbek-Korean relations are living proof that public diplomacy does not merely complement official diplomacy, it precedes it. In conclusion, I would like to return to the theme of our forum, peace and prosperity through overcoming conflict. The Korean Peninsula is one of the most sensitive and at the same time one of the most important focal points of contemporary geopolitics. And it is precisely here that public diplomacy in its broadest sense can play a particularly important role. Because both global experience and our own experience in Central Asia demonstrate that trust between people always precedes trust between states. Political agreements are important, but they are sustainable only when they rest upon genuine human connections, mutual understandings, and shared experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aripov. I'll ask you one question. You don't have to answer now. After all the presenters make presentations, and I give you a chance to answer my question. My question is that Central Asia seems very unique, according to your presentation, because countries there, despite the conflicts and animosity, they built mutual trust and economic ties, which came up with political will to cooperate and some concrete mechanism thereafter. Which seems very interesting, because what I think is that whenever there comes something among people to people cooperations and economic cooperations, whenever something happens in political terms, that all the cooperation achievements all break down. In Europe, in Asia, the same thing. For example, one of the examples is that Korea, Japan, China, we had made a lot of efforts to build cooperations in economic terms and people-to-people ties, and a lot of increase in tourism. But when some political issues broke up, for example, Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi is very anti-Chinese, and all the low-level cooperations gone suddenly. But Central Asia case is very unique in the sense that has been built up into political level cooperations. So I'm just wondering what has been a specific example of those cooperations and that has led up to the political level cooperation. This is the same to European Union. When the European countries tried to integrate themselves, so they began with economic ties. European Coal and Steel Community, that's one of the big examples. But that was not achieved to the political level ultimately. The other solution for the political integration came with political leaders institutionalizing their meetings, right? So that's something very unique from my perspective, and that's the question I would like to give to you. Next, presenters, Serjan Doğan. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Kim Hyunuk. Dear Professor Kang, Professor Jang, the organizing committee of the HK+ National Strategy Team and the Hankook University of Foreign Affairs, distinguished ambassadors, esteemed colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me today to speak in front of such an audience. Before I start, I would like to convey the regards by Dr. Oğuz Güner, Head of Public Diplomacy of Turkish Presidency's Directorate of Communications, who was initially planned here today to speak on this forum, yet he is unable to join due to pressing health concerns. So today I would like to begin conveying his speech with a simple but perhaps a little unsettling but equally striking questions. Can an unmanned aerial vehicle change a country's global image all by itself? For years, the literature on public diplomacy has suggested that a country can become attractive in the international arena through its culture, values, and historical narratives. This classical approach is undoubtedly valuable. However, in an increasingly turbulent and crisis-driven and competitive geopolitical environment of the 21st century, merely appearing appealing is no longer sufficient to create and sustain diplomatic influence for states. This is precisely where the central argument of my remarks lies today. In the case of Turkey, public diplomacy has moved beyond the boundaries of traditional cultural narratives. The capacity to provide security and produce high technology has emerged as the country's new and the most effective instrument of image projection. This classical concept of soft power, introduced to the literature by Josun, is based on the ability of a state to generate attraction through its culture, political values, and legitimate foreign policy. Korea's remarkable Hallyu Korean wave, which has captivated audiences around the world, including the Turkish youth, through its popular culture, cinema, and music, is undoubtedly one of the most extraordinary and successful examples of this classical model of cultural attraction and soft power projection. In this traditional framework, attraction and persuasion take the center stage. However, today, we can see this framework has serious structural limitations. Soft power largely produces a passive form of appeal suited to times of peace. Yet, the New World Order we have entered rests on a far harsher reality, one marked by relentless geopolitical competition where security crises and active conflicts have become the norm. In this crisis-driven environment, it is impossible for states to secure strategic weight and manage crisis merely by appearing culturally appealing. It is precisely this limitation that has led to the emergence of new concepts in the public diplomacy literature. Today, we are confronted with new paradigms such as hybrid power, in which cultural persuasion and deterrence are intertwined, or sharp power, which influences target audiences through asymmetric means, and tech diplomacy, through which states leverage their technological innovation capacity as a direct instrument of diplomatic influence. These new instruments empower states, particularly in times of crisis, so that they can transcend the limits of mere attractiveness by providing direct technological security to their allies and deterring their rivals through asymmetric measures. In short, they provide a tangible and rational form of power projection that changes the dynamics on the ground. When we examine this theoretical framework through the case of Turkey, we encounter a remarkable transformation. At the heart of this transformation lies, without a doubt, Turkey's high technology defense industry. In particular, unmanned aerial vehicles such as the Bayraktar TB2 and Akıncı are not merely military assets. They are new generation diplomatic symbols that have entered global circulation. The effectiveness of these technologies in altering the dynamics on the ground in many regions and crisis areas has led to an unprecedented international media visibility. In military literature, the term combat proven has evolved into a significant global brand value for Turkey in the context of public diplomacy transcending national boundaries. This technological breakthrough served as a direct mechanism for shaping perceptions and dramatically altered Turkey's image in the target regions. Turkey is no longer merely a historical and cultural destination. It is now positioned as a game-changer actor capable of independently developing its advanced technology and disrupting the status quo during crisis. The geographical reflections of this new perception building process are highly strategic. In Africa, Turkey's image, once shaped primarily by traditional humanitarian diplomacy, has evolved into that of a reliable and autonomous technology and security partner that strengthens states' counter-terrorism capabilities. In Africa, Turkey's image once associated primarily with TICA's food assistance or hospital projects, is now being shaped across a vast arc extending from Burkina Faso to Somalia by Bayraktar's TB2s that deliver operational advantages against terrorist organizations. Turkey is now more than a humanitarian benefactor on the continent. It's an autonomous and reliable technology partner that strengthens states' capacity to combat terrorism. Also, Turkey's image in Eastern Europe has undergone a significant transformation, particularly due to the success of its unmanned combat aerial vehicles in shifting the battlefield balance in the war in Ukraine. Having proven its capabilities in times of crisis, Turkey has fundamentally reshaped the image by exporting fleet-level advanced technologies in key frontline NATO allies such as Poland and Romania. Turkey is no longer a distant barrier safeguarding the alliance's southern flank. It has emerged as a continental security provider, directly reinforcing Europe's eastern front against the Russian threats. In Central Asia, the nostalgic and emotional ties that for many years were built primarily on shared language and history have gradually given way to a rational form of integration manifested in concrete realities on the ground. Today, the foundation being laid for Anka unmanned aerial vehicle joint production facilities in Kazakhstan, along with the Bayraktar TB2 military bases established in Kyrgyzstan, are the clearest evidence of this transformation. Turkey's image in the region has evolved from that of a cultural relative into that of a deterrent strategic ally that works side by side with states to build their national security capacities through technology transfer. At this point, three key analytical arguments drawn from Turkey's experience can be put forward for discussion as a contribution to the literature on international relations and public diplomacy. First, contrary to popular belief, hard power instruments can generate a significant soft power effect. Exported advanced military technologies are perceived in recipient societies not merely as mechanical tools, but also as symbols of prestige, unwavering trust, and strategic solidarity. For example, it is no coincidence that in recent years, ordinary citizens in Lithuania and Poland organized crowdfunding campaigns worth millions of euros to procure Turkish unmanned aerial vehicles for their countries, or that songs were composed in conflict zones in tribute to these systems. The transformation of military equipment into an object of such widespread civilian appeal is significant sociological indicator of the diplomatic sympathy generated through technology. Secondly, technology is not merely an engineering achievement, but a narrative generator in its own right. In the case of Turkey, defense industry experts convey powerful conceptual messages. What is being exported to the international community is not merely equipment, rather, it is the vision of strategic independence and successful domestic production model in the face of monopolies and a resilient state capable of withstanding global shocks. Simply put, technology has become the global manifesto of a country's autonomous stance. Thirdly, and perhaps most critically, security communication is a novel and essential form of public diplomacy. In the modern world, states cannot be persuasive in times of crisis by simply telling the story of their historical cultures and values. Today, where conflicts and geopolitical ruptures have become the norm, the key issue is to demonstrate capability to allies. Exhibiting the power to alter the reality on the ground is not only an act of defense, but also the most rational and modern practice of diplomatic communication for persuading allies and the international public. As with any academic or analytical assessment, we must also have the courage to discuss the potential risks associated with this strategic transformation. An excessive shift in a country's international image and external visibility towards security, defense, and military technology naturally carries the risk of criticism regarding militarization. Such an extensive securitization of foreign policy and national image may over time overshadow the country's civilian appeal and inclusiveness of its traditional soft power. Achievements in traditional fields such as education, culture, and humanitarian aid falling behind technological arms exports may give rise to perceptual imbalance. This leaves us with a highly critical and fundamental question. Is this new image projection centered on technology and security a sustainable architecture for public diplomacy in the long term, or merely a temporary reflex triggered by contingent geopolitical crisis? In conclusion, Turkey's experience presents an entirely new, hybrid, and proactive model of what we may call post-cultural public diplomacy. What makes this model hybrid is that Turkey has not abandoned traditional instruments of soft power, such as humanitarian assistance, education, or cultural diplomacy. On the contrary, it is the unprecedented synthesis of civilian appeal with high technology and autonomous defense capabilities that makes it hybrid. This model's proactivity lies in the state's reflex to move beyond being merely an actor calling for restraint during crisis and to directly offer its allies the technological capabilities to alter the balance on the ground. The very essence of post-cultural public diplomacy lies precisely here, not settling for a passive appeal that merely recounts the legacy of the past, but rather becoming one of the founding actors of the international system through building the security architecture of tomorrow. As we navigate an increasingly challenging geopolitical century, the parameters of public diplomacy have been irreversibly transformed. Public diplomacy is no longer simply a sympathetic practice of storytelling, through which states communicate their values to others. Modern diplomatic communication is built upon the ability to demonstrate tangible power on the ground and through the display of autonomous capability, generate new trust-based meanings for one's allies. Turkey's technology-driven strategic projection is one of the clearest harbingers of this new era. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Serjan Doğan. It's a very interesting presentation. Turkey has begun to become a deterrent strategic ally as a NATO member. It wants to be more autonomous and self-fulfilling in the sense of security of its own country. Just explain to me, I'm not really fully conversant with the regional security situation. So when did that happen? What situation was the motive for Turkey to take that kinds of active, policy change in security policies? That's my first question. The second one is that I'm not really sure if this is a soft power-based public diplomacy. It seems like this is just a building up of hard power in military sense, which from the neighboring countries, Turkey is now perceived as a strong military security partner in this region. So I'm still not clear in what sense do you think this can be a very effective tool as a public diplomacy? That's my question. Thirdly, we have Mr. Farid Shafier. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like also to express my appreciation to you, to all organizers, to Hankook University for this event. And let me tackle the issue of diplomacy a bit from the historical and geographic perspectives. I'm from Azerbaijan, so from the other side of the Caspian Sea. So, and speaking about this vast area, which academically sometimes called Eurasian space, some experts call it the Caspian region. So that basically unites Central Asia, South Caucasus. And currently we are speaking about this region as a land between Asian powers and European powers. There are certain enduring features in this vast area, which I would call Caspian region, essential component of the Eurasian landmass. And first feature is the geopolitical competition. Historically, from the formation of some medieval states, region witnessed intense competition among neighboring empires and kingdoms. In 19th century, Central Asia became the arena of so-called great game between the British and Russian empires. This web of political competition also facilitated extensive economic and cultural exchange. At the same time, these vast continental empires moved people across enormous distances. This brings us to the second defining feature of the region, migration. Present-day Hungary, India, Pakistan, Egypt, and many other countries far from the core of Eurasia continue to bear traces of these historical migrations. People originating from Eurasia established states and communities across Africa, Asia, and Europe, leaving a lasting imprint on global history. And I believe today, when we're speaking about the public diplomacy, this cultural and economic exchange which emerged from the medieval times still affects how states currently interact with each other. The third feature relates to roads, or in modern terminology, transport corridors. Goods, ideas, technologies, and cultures moved along the famous Silk Road for centuries. And today we are witnessing the rise of so-called Middle Corridor as a renewed bridge connecting East and West. And Middle Corridor is at least in my region, in the Caspian region and in my country, is the buzzword. And the Middle Corridor assumed especially significant weight in the light of two big wars, which we can see on the perimeters of the Caspian region. First, Russian-Ukrainian war, and second, American-Iranian war. Well, we today heard just some good news that the deal was agreed upon. Still, uncertainty remains, and what we see that the Middle Corridor, and when I'm speaking about corridor, it's not just the land route, it's also air traffic. By the way, the air traffic increased significantly through my country, through the Caspian region during the war, and still, I think many people prefer this route. Myself, 2 years ago, I went to Seoul through Doha, Qatar. Today, a few days ago, I picked up the Tashkent as a transit hub, and I'm going back through Almaty. So for safety reason and also for transport reason. So let me come to the point about Middle Corridor. What we see now began developing in the 90s. First, it was the European Union project called TRASECA, Transport Corridor Caucasus Central Asia. But unfortunately, European Union didn't have a consistent policy toward these transport and logistic potentials. And what we've seen lately, it was China Belt and Road Initiative, which I think they took more prominence in the view of, I would say, lack of initiative from the European countries. And then countries of the region itself became active, and I'm speaking about so-called Trans-Caspian international route, which three countries, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, my country, and Georgia, began developing along with Turkey. And currently, it's the cargo flow increased 5 times for the last 5 years. We also heard the news about new branch of this Central Asian transport corridor, which going from China, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and construction already began. And we hope that this new branch will be extended also towards the Caspian Sea and Azerbaijan. And I'm speaking not only from the point of view of its selfish interest, but also from the point of view commercial viability and the security, because despite some good news on the situation around Iran, I think the geopolitical uncertainty remains in the near future. Anyway, I think the importance of this corridor, it is up to the commercial entities to appreciate it, because whatever political decision will be made by the governments, it will be upon business people to decide by which route to use, which route is more commercially viable, more safe, and cheaper. And despite some skepticism about Caspian route, middle corridor, the figures speaks for themselves. The cargo flow increases. And when speaking about skepticism, some experts point to multimodality of this route. So you have to, if you send something through across Central Asia, you have to unload cargo to cross Caspian Sea, then load back, etc. So of course it raises the cost of transport and also the time. But again, what we've seen that some experiments made by the countries to move cargo from China to Europe, the shortest time, 14 days. And again, since uncertainty around Russian-Ukrainian war continues, the Red Sea and that route also, until recently, was quite, the situation was unstable. I believe that middle corridor represent certain niche. It cannot replace maritime routes. It cannot replace traditional routes, but it has a certain niche which it can utilize for the benefit of the countries. Again, it will be up to the business people to decide. But also what we see in recent years, it's not only the increased cargo flow between, let's say, Europe and China, Europe and other Asian countries. We see increased internal trade, for example, between Central Asia and the countries in the Caucasus, Azerbaijan and, for example, other Central Asian partners. Another important development we see in the region, in the South Caucasus, it is the so-called Trump route for international peace and prosperity. With all sometimes media criticism about Donald Trump policy, but the injection of Trump administration into peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan had indeed positive effect. And the Armenian and Azerbaijan leaders signed last August in Washington agreement, initialed peace treaty. I will come to that point. But also United States pledged to build a corridor between Azerbaijan and its exclave Nakhchivan through Armenian territory. And that small route, 42 kilometers, can also be an important link between Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Turkey. And hopefully the peace process, which began last year, will be continued. We had some good news about the also elections in Armenia, which happened a week ago on June 7th. So that overall development, along with the TRIP, Trump Route for Peace and Prosperity, might bring another web of connectivity to the South Caucasus. As I would like also to move to another important areas of cooperation. It's the multilateralism and regional platforms. Azerbaijan's foreign policy is guided by a vision of regional connectivity, strategic cooperation, and economic integration. We are speaking, and I would like to focus on two organizations right now. One is the C6 framework, and another in the Organization of Turkic States. So what is the C6 framework? As you know, and today it was mentioned that in Korea will be the summit of the Central Asian states and plus Korea. Last year in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan joined C5 platform, turning C5 into C6. So that is the natural geography of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan united with Central Asia historically, religiously, linguistically, and culturally. And today we see economic development between Azerbaijan and 5 Central Asian states in different areas. And by the way, tomorrow, also in Uzbekistan, there is a big conference on investment, and Prime Minister of Azerbaijan will be attending this conference. So a key objective of the C6 initiative is the enhancement of transport and transit links. Azerbaijan's maritime capabilities on the Caspian Sea, combined with the extensive railway, port, and logistic infrastructure, provided landlocked Central Asian states with diversified access to international markets. For the Middle Corridor, countries of the region can strengthen trade, connection with Turkey, Europe, the Black Sea Basin, and the Mediterranean, reducing dependence on traditional transit routes and creating new opportunities for economic growth. The sixth framework also reflects a broader transformation in regional energy cooperation. While hydrocarbon resources remain important, cooperation is increasingly focused on sustainable energy development and green transition initiative. A notable example is the trilateral agreement signed in January 2025 by Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan, which aims to advance renewable energy cooperation, facilitate the transmission of green electricity, expand solar and wind energy capacity. As you know, Azerbaijan delivering traditional energy resources, oil and gas, oil to international markets through Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, and now Azerbaijan delivering gas to 10 European Union countries through the so-called Southern Gas Corridors. And we're also delivering gas to non-EU countries in the Balkans like Serbia, Albania. Though the amount of gas delivery of Azerbaijan is small, we cannot compare to big suppliers like it was Russia or some other countries. But Azerbaijani gas is very essential for individual European markets. Like for Bulgaria, it's almost 50%. For Italy, if I'm not mistaken, about 20-25%, which in the time of crisis, this amount of energy supply makes an important addition. But speaking about renewables, the memorandum we signed with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, potential is to deliver those renewables to European markets through Black Sea cable. We signed another memorandum with Georgia, Hungary, and Romania. So when we're speaking about this westward connection, surely potential exists for eastward. Already some countries of Central Asia delivers gas and other energy sources to Asian markets. I think this potential also exists for countries not only to tap those resources, but also to invest. And my colleague, the representative of Embassy of Azerbaijan, First Secretary Gar Gafarov, spoke about Korean-Azerbaijani cooperation. I don't want to repeat major points, but I think potential exists for a more robust cooperation between our countries, and probably we need more robust vision from Korean side, because Azerbaijan is ready to expand engagement. Also, I would like to mention about another important platform, Organization of Turkic States. Basically, all Central Asian states except Tajikistan, a Turkish-speaking country. And we believe in the importance of public diplomacy among Turkic states. We believe in the importance of cultural and economic cooperation, but also we believe in the importance of the security cooperation in view of the uncertain situation and geopolitical struggle on the perimeters of the Caspian Sea in the north and the south, as I mentioned. The cooperation among Turkic states in the field of the defense industry, in the fields of the security, can be important addition for other areas. And let me turn now to the peace in the South Caucasus. I mentioned briefly, we believe in importance of the principle of territorial integrity, sovereignty. That was Azerbaijan was the main advocate of this principle in the South Caucasus. Unfortunately, for 30 years, it was ignored. The United Nations Security Council supported Azerbaijan's territorial integrity, but only in 2020, Azerbaijan was able to restore its territorial integrity and sovereignty. And I wish the third country of the South Caucasus, Georgia, will do the same in the future. But what is emerging right now, it's the both peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and also peace and cooperation between free South Caucasian states. To finalize peace, we need Armenia to adopt relevant changes into constitution, because Armenian constitution has a reference to Azerbaijan's territory, namely to Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, and we believe for the long-term peace, we cannot depend on the vision of one person, for example, the current Prime Minister of Armenia, Pashinyan. We need a legal framework, proper legal framework. For that reason, we expect that the Armenian government will move towards the constitutional, the change of constitution. Whether it will be done through referendum or through other means, it's up to the Armenian side to decide. But after that, I believe we can finally sign peace treaty, and also along with that, we believe that we should implement TRIP, the corridor between Armenia and Azerbaijan. We have some other development between our two countries, including track to diplomacy, because the topics of our discussion is the public diplomacy, and already expert community, the representative of non-governmental organizations began meeting directly in third countries, but also in Armenia and Azerbaijan. I think this is something important, and all actors, the international actors are welcome to contribute to the peace in the South Caucasus. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shafiev. I have a question for you. In establishing corridor, middle corridor, another corridor, some countries that's relevant to the corridor. In case of middle corridor, you mentioned the Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey. Were there any political hurdles? Were no hurdles at all? Because if there were, how could you guys, countries, overcome that? Because in case of South Korea, one of the ideal scenario that some people in South Korea have is we can build some railroad starting from South Korea, passing North Korea, China, and going to Europe, which looks very ideal and would not be achieved at all because of all the differences in political systems and ideologies and antagonism we have against North Korea. So were there any political hurdles in building that? So I have 3 questions for each presenters. So after hearing your answers, maybe I'll have a short break. Thank you.
Yeah, you raised a very interesting question regarding whether political crisis could provoke another conflict in Central Asia. What I would like to mention again, that for almost 25 years, people in Central Asia suffered a lot of unresolved disputes in Central Asia. Just one example, for 25 years, we didn't have a direct flight between Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, very close neighbors. And I remember times when, in order to participate in the conference in Dushanbe, we took flights to Istanbul and then from Istanbul flight to Dushanbe. Again, for the friends, for the relatives, it was difficult even to visit graves on the other side of the border. And from this point of view, you should understand that there was a huge public demand for change, for peace. And to be frank, the first leader who really understood this was President of Uzbekistan, who initiated this process. And then this process was fully supported, widely supported by all other leaders of Central Asia. And because of this public demand, it was so easy for political leaders to find compromises. It's also was very decisive factor. Another issue which I would like to mention, that we have established quite good and effective mechanism of cooperation right now. On the level of the presidents, they meet regularly in the format of consultative meetings together with Azerbaijan right now, on the level of the ministers, on the level of different working groups. So I believe this kind of mechanism will help to prevent such kind of conflicts and will sustain the dialogue, at least in times of in other crises. And another example is, of course, what we see right now is the growing interconnectedness among the economies of Central Asia. The biggest dispute for us was water distribution. Water is the biggest challenge for Central Asia, and actually 80% of all water resources in Central Asia are being formed in upper stream states, in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. But for example, the main consumption of these water resources in Uzbekistan, because 50% of the population of Central Asia live in Uzbekistan, and we need water resources for agriculture. upstream states need to produce electricity, so they want to release water during winter. We do not water during the winter season. It damages our fields. We need water during summer in order to irrigate our crop. So what kind of compromises was found? For example, we buy gas from Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, produce from this gas electricity, and sell this electricity during the winter to Kyrgyzstan. In response, Kyrgyzstan does not release water during the winter season. It's allocate water, and we use this water for irrigational needs during the summer. So we were able to find such kind of solutions of very difficult issues. And I believe all this will guarantee that we would be able to prevent further conflicts in the region.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah.
Yes. No, in terms of any hurdles, political hurdles between the countries you mentioned, no, we have really good relationship, very close relationship, not just good, but very close relationship. Kazakhstan across Caspian Sea were united through the web of, again, which I mentioned, historical, linguistic, religious, and other connections. Georgia, our strategic partners, we already implemented mega projects like Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan, Baku-Tbilisi-Kars Railway. Also with Turkey, the country which were speaking almost the same language, and it's our military ally. So no, we never faced, and I hope that not only these countries, but as I mentioned, that another branch is emerging in Central Asia, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and hopefully to Turkmenistan. And there is no, now, as Mr. Aripov mentioned, there was some attention between those countries maybe 5-10 years ago, but no longer. What, though, in terms of hurdles, the multimodality, Caspian Sea, also there is effect of whether it's climate change or historical cycles, the level of Caspian Sea goes down. This is quite alarming, and that requires additional investment. So when we're speaking about hurdles, mostly it's the economic of nature, more investment. We've heard that the European Union pledged $12 billion to Central Asian countries for so-called Global Gateway Program. Again, sounds a bit critical of European Union, but sometimes we see many words, but no action, no practical steps. Hopefully that won't be the case this time. So as to conclude, yeah, we don't have any political hurdles, but the need for investment and more economic interaction.
Thank you very much for your questions. Regarding your first question as to why Turkey felt the need to develop defense capabilities, national defense capabilities, if I understood correctly. So when we look at the last quarter century, more than 25 years, the region that Turkey is located in is faced with constant crisis, conflicts, and even wars. So today, if you look to the south, east, or north of Turkey, we have Iran war. We had this 15 years of civil war in Syria, and is still trying to recover. And to the north, we have Ukraine war. So under such circumstances, Turkey feels the need to rely on its domestic and national capabilities for its defense needs. Of course, we are a NATO member, and we contribute to the NATO budget and to the NATO operations in a great deal. Yet, we feel the need that we have to rely on domestic capabilities. We have the educated manpower, we have the technological infrastructure and necessary doctrine. So this is actually what it feels normal to develop such capability. As to your second question, how does hard power convert into soft power? So this is how we can conceptualize it, because we think it contributes, we believe it contributes to the country image of a dependable strategic partner. So we have the technology, we have the means and of this drone technology. It is combat proven, it is effective, it is cost effective, and it produces tangible and concrete results on the battlefield. And our policy about this drone technology is that we can produce this together with like-minded countries, our allies, our friends. So we can have joint production and we can have a technology transfer. So we are an equal and dependable partner to these countries in producing and sharing this technology. So this, we believe, contributes to the country image. And also drone technology is also effective in touching civilian lives through, for example, search and rescue efforts and in agriculture, for example. So as a diplomat, this is what I can answer to these questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the audience? Yes, thank you. Give microphone to her, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, dear speakers, for your presentations. And I got a question to the representatives of Caspian states. My name is Maria Stepanova. I'm working in Almaty focusing on energy transition and energy efficiency. Yes. Experts say that Caspian is under risk of climate threat, yes, because it is the level of water is going down, and all the Caspian countries are planning more and more cargo and transport and corridors and green energy and everything. So what are the forecasts? How to tackle with it?
Maybe no more questions. Thank you.
Yes, the Caspian Sea is going down. Some experts connect it with the current climate change, though what we know from the historical archives, the Caspian Sea is, previously also went down and went up. Even during my lifetime, I remember in the 70s, 80s, Caspian Sea went down, but then in 90s it went up. So we don't know, though some says that Russia now using a lot of water on Volga River for irrigation. That's another cause of, it's the mostly man-made the problem. In terms of now the corridor, two countries affected primarily Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, Port Baku and Port Aktau in Kazakhstan. So the Azerbaijan side already began investing to make the port deeper water, as condition for to tackle this. But of course, it needs more investment. And the same on the Kazakhstani side. Of course, we cannot predict how much the water will go down. But again, there is some historical estimates. But hopefully we won't see disaster like around the Aral Sea, because which affected Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan greatly, and it has not recovered. That's the problem. With Caspian Sea, we've seen and we have some hopes that at certain point it will stop. So the answer: more money, more investment.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe we'll have a short break. Why don't we have 30 minutes too long? So maybe you can have 20-minute break and resume the... Huh? Oh, you want to have a shorter? We can begin at 3:10. 3:10, would that be fine? Yeah, let's resume the next session at 3:10. Thank you so much.